Hello, welcome back to another video. Today's video is another installment of our exercise series, and I recommend that to understand this video better and for it to make a little bit more sense that you watch the other ones first, because I don't want to be constantly repeating the same thing, even though the things that I have said before are important to understand this video. So today we're going to be talking about how to avoid flares related to exercising. The reason that this is important, in my opinion, is that because our illness can be a lot worse when we overexert. So exercising is a very easy way for us to cause overexertion and hurt ourselves. So I think it's really important that to reap the benefits of exercising, that we avoid flaring and we avoid sort of certain things that could be harmful to us. And in this video, we're going to talk about a few steps that are very important to take when you are exercising and sort of how to build up your exercise routine in order for you to do it in the safest way possible. But also I'm going to include a few tips and methods of avoiding an overexertion. For now, I want to start with the basics of how to avoid flaring and just how to exercise safely. And this goes not just for people with fibromyalgia or chronic illness. This goes for everyone. When I was at dance school, this is how we learned how to construct a healthy workout, a healthy class. And it's just the best way to treat your body. So a very important part of avoiding flares and avoiding injury is to exercise in a safe way, like I just said. And it is important to separate your workout or your routine or your program, whatever you want to call it, the class you're taking. It's important that it's separated into a few different parts that are really important. Most good teachers in any class that you go to will maybe not tell you that this is how they're splitting the class, but these will be the elements that they use to build a class. I hope that makes sense. So the first one is to warm up. This is something that I'm sure we've all heard about. You shouldn't just start exercising without warming up. And the reason that warming up is very important is because you are preparing your body for the conditioning phase that comes next. You are making sure that all of your joints are well lubricated, that all of your muscles are slightly warmer, and that they are more flexible and they're more ready to endure what you are about to do. So this phase should last between 2 to 5 minutes or until you feel like your body's temperature is rising. Make sure that it starts slow and it isn't very intense, and that you are building up to the intensity of your workout. Your warm-up should be less intense than your workout, regardless how intense your workout is, if that makes sense. Step number 2 in our workout program should be the actual workout. This will be the conditioning phase of the program. This should be enough to achieve your target heart rate or your perceived exertion level. This is what we're going to be discussing later. And the duration will depend on your current level of fitness. Ultimately, the goal is to do 20 minutes, but it could take you months or years to get there, and it's okay. If you are less fit and if you're just starting out, maybe you're gonna do 5 minutes. It will depend. For the people who are total beginners, who have been experiencing really big flares and you're just dipping your toes into exercising, there are 2 ways to go about this. You can either start with a few minutes in the morning and a few minutes in the afternoon, progressing slowly and within your abilities. Or you can start with 2 minutes of low intensity, then 2 minutes of increased intensity, 1 minute low intensity, 2 minutes increased intensity, and sort of break the workout so that you aren't always at a really high intensity, but you keep moving and you don't cool down. And this keeps you from overexertion and helps you build up endurance over time. And then with time, you would increase from 2 minutes to 4, but then you would decrease the lower intensity minutes. So you would go up to, like, let's say 4 minutes of high intensity walking and 1 minute of low intensity walking, so on and so forth. I hope that's clear and not really confusing. Once you're done with your workout, we come to stage number 3 in our program, which is the cool down phase. And this is really ignored by a lot of people. A lot of people know to warm up and then do their workout, but most people ignore the cooling down phase, which is so important. The idea behind the cooling down phase is just like you didn't just whack into your workout, you warmed up before, you prepared your body to increase your heart rate slowly. You also shouldn't just abruptly stop exercising, because it's the same thing. You should slowly decrease your heart rate by continuing to move, but decreasing the intensity slowly. Obviously, this is especially important once you start to do higher intensity workouts, because if you are doing really low intensity workouts at the beginning, this isn't as important because you won't be as warm and you won't have risen your heart rate that much. But once you're starting to do higher intensity things, it really is important because it helps reduce the risk of injury. It also prevents the pooling of blood in the legs, which causes dizziness and is very common in people with fibromyalgia. Step number 4, which can be sort of mushed with step number 3, is stretching. So this is the continuation of a cool down period. Like I said, it can be mushed together. And it will consist of you stretching out your arms, your legs, your back, neck, as well as any joints or areas that might be more stiff or problematic for you, to help loosen them up in the long run. This will obviously help reduce the stiffness and soreness after you exercise, but also because your muscles are now warm and more flexible, more stretchy, this is a good time to stretch them out, to get them to just make sure that they don't atrophy, because after you've used your muscles, it's hard to explain the science behind it, but after you've used your muscles, they can become more tense, and if you don't stretch them out after using them, that is how then you get a lot of knots and a lot of like tension, and we already have that. We're really prone to that, which is why stretching is so helpful for us and why it's so important that we do it after the workout. So you can, as you're cooling down, you can start your stretching, and it's very important that you do, even if you haven't used, like for example, your hip joints, but they are very painful for you normally. Now that your body is warmer, it's a really good idea to do that now, because it reduces the risk of you hurting yourself, but helps those muscles and those joints stretch out a little bit and be used, so that with time of doing this, you will reduce pain in those areas. Step number 5, and the last step of the program, is to rest. So each exercise session should be followed by a period of quiet, seated rest to allow your heart rate and your blood pressure to go back to normal. You can also avoid very hot or very cold showers, saunas, hot tubs immediately after you exercise due to the possible changes they can cause in your heart rate and your blood pressure, so to make sure that you don't have any spikes and things like that. The best way to avoid overexertion is to control your breathing and your heart rate. It does depend on what kind of physical activity you choose and at which intensity you are doing it, but I would especially recommend becoming more aware of your heart rate if you are doing aerobic exercise. I find that taking slow, deep breaths throughout my workout and remembering to breathe in and breathe out calmly really helps me keep my heart rate from going into very high peaks. And avoiding your heart rate having these peaks helps you avoid flares because you're not exerting yourself so much. A good way to keep track of this is through fitness trackers or smartwatches, which give you a pretty accurate idea of what is going on. However, I know that not everyone will be able to afford these or even want one, so I'm going to include another option that focuses on something else rather than your heart rate. But I find that that is the most accurate way to know what is going on and to make sure that you stay within your limits. So before you start exercising, you can check your resting heart rate to determine what heart rate you will want to be at during exercise. We will talk about this more later on, but a normal resting heart rate is around 60 to 80, although for some reason people with fibromyalgia seem to have higher resting heart rates. Mine is always between 90 and 100. The reason that you can check is because if you are having more anxiety or if you are more tired and more fatigued, normally your heart rate will be higher. This will be needed to take into consideration how much you can exert yourself during your workout, and it will help you not go over that limit. So it's important to make sure you know where you're at. So during exercise, you can check periodically your heart rate to see if you are within your target zone and readjust your activity intensity level to maintain your pulse in that zone. You can also keep a record of your heart rates for a week or a month, etc., however long you want, including the heart rate immediately after you exercise and after cool down and stretching, to compare if you feel any cardiovascular improvement, or in our case, if you ever need to show it to a doctor. But ideally, you should notice a change as you become more fit. Both your resting heart rate and your after exercise rates should become lower after consistent exercise. The idea is that as your heart grows stronger, it needs to beat less often to accomplish its duties. It will also be concrete evidence to show your improvement or lack of improvement if you are not feeling it, and then that could be helpful to figure out what is wrong if you're not feeling any improvements. I would also like to add that, for example, with smartwatches, I don't know about fitness trackers because I don't have one, but I have a smartwatch, and I've installed an app which is constantly controlling my heart rate, and it vibrates on my wrist every time that I go into a certain zone. So like if I'm at 120, 130, 140 kind of thing, and it vibrates and it reminds me that I need to slow down or that I can speed up a little bit. It is an expensive thing to purchase, but I also think that if you can invest in one, it is a really good investment, because the amount of times that I could have been flaring but wasn't because I was controlling my heart rate, like I feel like that is worth the money, because you are avoiding flares, and flares cost money because you can't go to work, you can't, even if you work from home, you can't work as much, and that means that you're making less money. So I feel like it is a good investment. You don't have to buy like this super expensive smartwatch. You can get a fitness tracker that still does that, and that is like, for example, water resistant if you want to go swimming or something like that, and make sure that it's something that really fits your needs, but that will let you know what your heart rate is and will help you preventing flares, which I think is like our number one concern when we exercise, and exercise is really helpful for us. Anyway, I'm going off topic, but yes, let's see how we determine our heart rates and our target heart rate zone and all of this stuff. So this is one way to determine your target heart rate zone. So at what percentage you want your heart to be working, how much more over your resting heart rate. I did find more than one way, but one of them supposedly was more conservative and better for people with our illness and stuff, but I thought that that was really confusing and didn't really make any sense. So I'm going to give you this one, which actually takes into account your fitness level, your current, like right now fitness level, which is what we want. It's like the most helpful thing. And the way that it takes into consideration your current fitness level is because it uses your current heart rate. So as you improve, your resting heart rate will change. So then you will recalculate it and it will give you different results. The first step is obtaining your maximum heart rate. So this is like the absolute maximum that your heart can go to. You subtract your age from 220. So you do 220. I've got a little calculator and notepad to calculate mine with you. So you do 220 minus your age. Mine is 25, which gives me 195. And then after that, you subtract your resting heart rate after sitting quietly for 10 minutes. I checked my resting heart rate yesterday and it was a 92. So I'm gonna use that number. I'm gonna take 92 out of 195, which was my maximum heart rate. I will teach you how to measure your pulse in a minute, by the way. So don't worry if you don't know how to do it. After subtracting my resting heart rate from my maximum heart rate, I get 103. So now I'm going to multiply this by the percentage that I want. So the percentage is how much more of your heart rate you want to be using. So if you want to go 20% above your resting heart rate, or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. I would suggest that the maximum you ever go to is 60%. That is sort of the ideal value for a healthy person that exercises on a regular basis. But I would say if you want to start with 10%, that's totally okay. And I normally stick within between 20 to 40% and never really go any higher than that because I'm scared of getting hurt. Do whatever suits you best. I'm going to calculate mine at 20%. So we're going to do 103 times 0.2, which gives me 20.6. And now I'm going to add my resting heart rate, which was 92. 92 plus 20.6, which will give me 112.6. And if you want to now obtain a 10-second count, so how many beats you should have in a 10-second window, you divide this by 6 so that you don't have to wait a full minute to calculate it and see if you're doing well. You can just use a 10-second window, which is a lot easier. The idea is that if I'm exercising at 20% capacity of my heart rate, I should be having 112.6 beats per minute. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I will help you calculate it better, but I hope it makes sense. So, how to take your pulse, how to find out your resting heart rate. If you have a smartwatch or a fitness tracker, it will do it for you. You just have to sit down for 10 minutes and then check what your resting heart rate is. But if you don't have one, you can find your radial artery in your wrist. It's somewhere here. It's the big one. Then you can place your index and middle fingers side by side on your wrist just below the base of your thumb and press very lightly. So right there. I don't know if that is clear how to do it. I find that this is not the easiest way to do it. You can also use your neck. So here just to the right of your Adam's apple, I find that this is a lot easier to use and it's just like more like a stronger beat. So I find that it's easier here. Make sure you don't use your thumb because your thumb has like a quite strong pulse on its own and it can be very confusing if you're trying to take your pulse and yeah. So to find out your resting heart rate, you are going to count the number of beats you feel in 30 seconds and then either multiply it by 2 or you can just count the full minute. The way that I do this is I set a minute in my phone, like a like stopwatch kind of thing. And I set it to 1 minute and then I just count how many beats there were. Yeah, so you can also do 30 seconds and then multiply it by 2. I find that counting the full minute is better, like more reliable. But if you forget halfway through, then it's not more reliable. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do. And then when you're exercising, if you don't have like a smartwatch thing that will like tell you that you're going overboard with your excitement, you can count the number of beats you feel in 10 seconds to get your exercise heart rate, like I said before. So you know how many beats per 10 seconds or per minute you should be to like be in your target zone. So like for mine, it was 112.6. So if I divided that by 6, would be 18.76. So let's say 19 beats in 10 seconds. So while I'm exercising, I could count a 10-minute window and make sure that I am having those many beats in that 10-second window. I hope that wasn't super confusing. I don't know if it was or not. I'm kind of like in a lot of pain today, didn't sleep very well, like kind of on painkillers and a bit foggy, so I don't know what I'm saying 100%. So if you do not want to go down the whole like heart rate thing, I do have a backup plan for you. So let's explain it. It's called the perceived exertion scale, and it's another way to monitor the intensity of the activity that you're doing. It refers to the total amount of physical effort that you are experiencing. And this scale takes into account all the sensations of exertion, physical stress, and fatigue. The idea is to take into account how you're feeling and then to make sure that you stay alert to how you feel whilst you're exercising to make sure you don't overexert. When you use this scale, you should not focus on any specific body part, but instead you should focus on your total feeling of exertion. So an overall feeling of your body, mind, everything put together, if you had to give that a number in the scale of exertion. The scale is really weird, which is why I don't think it is better than the heart rate, because heart rate is more like mathematical, but this is just another way. I find it more confusing, but that's just my opinion. Okay, I'm gonna get on with it. So the scale is 6 to 7 would be very, very light exertion. 8 to 9 would be very light. 10 to 11 would be fairly light. 12 to 13 would be somewhat hard. 14 to 15 would be hard. 16 to 17, very hard, and 18 to 19, very, very hard. So the recommended level for a healthy, normal person would be 13 to 14. So between somewhat hard and hard. So that's how much you should be exerting yourself whilst you're exercising. The idea of this scale is that because it's your perception, it's like a perceptive thing. So it will be subjective to you and how you feel on that day. So the idea is that if you're very fatigued, you will feel tired more easily. So you will feel like you're doing somewhat hard exertion more easily than on a day you don't feel very fatigued. And it will, like, your numbers will change throughout the time. So I feel like it is reliable. It's subjective to how you feel. So it could work for you as well if it's something that you want to try. I find that because I'm very like scientific driven and like very pragmatic, I find that having more concrete things is easier, but it's up to you and how you feel and you want to go about it. I think one is better than the other for me, but I don't know like how you react to those things and like what you feel. So do what's best for you. Other things that are very important to take into consideration and to practice are staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, like 1.5 liters to 2 liters a day at least. Next is sticking to low impact movements to prevent excess soreness. So don't do things that are going to hurt you. Make sure that you're doing low impact exercises like walking, cycling, swimming, things that aren't going to hurt your joints. Avoid going into high intensity mode while exercising, so no more than 60% of your maximum heart rate, please. Like, you'll thank me later. And this will really help you prevent fatigue. If you're more prone to fatigue, then I would suggest staying like in the lower percentages, like 20 to 40%. Keep all your movements fluid and limit the range of motion of exercises that cause you pain. So for example, for me, exercises that cause a lot of pain are things that I have to use my arms behind my back or moving my neck too much, things like that. So I find that those I have to restrict how much I use those muscles and those joints. There's a difference between like a stretching pain and a pain. And the last point that I would like to make is to pace yourself and go slow and steady. I've said this in every single video so far, but I think this is going to be our last like sciencey, data-y video in the series. The next videos that I have planned are going to be more practical, like food-wise and snacks and stretches and things that I like to do. So our series is coming to an end. I hope you are enjoying it. I hope you're finding it helpful. I'm sorry, I feel like a lot of the videos that I made during this series, I was very tired. So I don't know, I think they didn't come out as great as I had hoped, but that is everything for today. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like and a comment, and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. It would mean a lot to me. You can also consider becoming a member on Patreon. You get some exclusive things and you help me dedicate more time to videos and to research and to raising awareness about fibromyalgia, and it would really help me build this channel up. That is everything that I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!